Okay.
So you can start presenting.
Good morning, everyone, or good day after.
Yeah, go on.
Hey. Okay. Good day, everyone. My name is Ifeyinwa Obichili. I'm in panel 14. That's Power and the News. And my topic is evaluation of power dynamics on broadcast television in Nigeria. Power affects all aspects of social life. It affects everything we do, and our power dynamics exist in human workplaces around the world, not just this part of the country, or in this part of the world, sorry. And it can allow businesses to go on peacefully. It can also allow smooth transitions of industries. But if this power is being abused, it can at the same time cause conflict. It can cause resentment. So our ability to understand and manage our power relationships in the workplaces, industry, and organizations is one of the most important skills. And our power dynamics in television broadcasting could be understood in the context of media ownership. Here in Nigeria, we have private-owned media, and we also have government-owned media. We have media ownership here can also be can be defined as a form of control by those who own and operate them, and those who own this media to a large extent affects the programming, affects the products, that's the production and everything that goes on in those industries. And there is this popular saying that in Nigeria that he who pays the piper dictates the tune. That's whoever that owns the media has the power to control whatever that happens in it, whatever that goes on there. This means that the broadcast television owners.
Can you show us the slide, because we're only seeing the name? Can you be pressing the slide as you're talking? You only show
okay.
So we'll be able to know where you are.
Okay, sorry. Okay, I said that there is this saying that who pays the piper dictates the tune, which means that broadcast television owners are in control of what their television broadcasts and how they broadcast them. And there are things here that are also not in the slide that I want to talk about the methodology that we used. We used survey method, which we adopted because this is a qualitative study where we had to interview some personnel, some stakeholders in the industry. And the population we used was Nigeria Television Authority. That's the staff in Nigeria Television Authority, NTA. And we used certain departments, that the programs, engineering, and news and current affairs departments. Sorry, those ones were not included in the slide. I didn't know I would be using the slide to present. Then for the sample size that we used was six respondents from each of the departments. And it was selected purposively. And can attest to you that purposive sampling helps is widely used as a technique in any qualitative research. Then in the method of data analysis used, we use grounded theory with its qualitative data analysis technique of in-depth interview. And the fundamental concept of this grounded theory is to read and then reread a textual database. Example, an interview transcripting that's interview transcripts, and again to discover or also to label variables like to categorize them, call them concepts, and call them properties, and again know their relationships. Then the ability to detect variables and relationships is what we call the theoretical sensitivity. And this theoretical sensitivity is influenced by the number of factors, including the literatures, and again, using techniques designed to improve the sensitivity. Then we also need the open coding part of the analysis, which concerns the identification and naming, categorization, and description of phenomena found in the text. Then in essence, each line, phrase, paragraph that is read to find the answer to the questions we asked. And these labels refer to things like, in the case of media ownership, which also affects the media control, that's the control of news production and everything. Then private media, public media, and also the news and information sources. Yeah. For the respondents, that's going straight to the discussion of findings, the key findings. One of the things that we found out was that the pattern of power dynamics in Nigeria television broadcast is in line with the existing reality in the Nigerian media industry. And the government generally has a lot of control over the media industry in Nigeria. In fact, to a very large extent, they dictate what comes out of the media industry. And again, in the course of the interview, the respondents also affirmed that power dynamics, if not well harnessed, if not well used, could result to creative limitations where someone has something to offer, but due to the rigidity or the control there, the person doesn't bring out his or her best for that. And it also results to fragmentation. It slows down and there's slowdown and control in policy making and implementation, where someone has idea to bring up, or maybe in terms of policies, but you see that the person is being how would I say, sidelined because you are not the owner of the media and you don't control the power, nothing, you're just like a tool. Yeah. Then also,
let's say you stop sharing your screen. You stop sharing your screen.
I'm sharing. Are you seeing it? I'm in key findings. Have you seen it?
Yes,
it's showing in my own, sharing a window.
You can see it now.
Okay. And the findings, I said that our broadcast television in Nigeria is a mixture of government and private ownership. Then I also said that the pattern of power dynamics in Nigeria television broadcast is in line with the existing reality in the Nigerian media industry. Then our power dynamics, I also say that if it is not well harnessed or used, could result to creative limitation where someone has something to offer, but the person doesn't come out here to offer it because there are rigidity and there is a sort of control that the person doesn't bring out his or her best for it, and it also affects production. But if this power dynamics is well used, it could result to a reduction or absence of conflict within team, because you see that if there is this control, even within the team, there'll still be misunderstanding, fragmentations, and conflicts. But where this power dynamics is well harnessed, then it will help to increase performance. And there will be easy flow of policies also. Then in harnessing the power for increased productivity and positive interaction, the following we have found. One is there is need for democratic reforms. There is need for democratic reforms where the television broadcasting is merged with telecommunications, and that there will be a quality production so that even foreign broadcasters will be able to take part, and they will not be binded by the regulations in this part of the country. Then there should also be transparent regulatory mechanism should also be allowed, where certain policies should be how will I say, should be played down to enable creativity to take higher hands. Then again, when it comes to political changes, broadcasting must also play a democratic role in the political changes in the country. Hello? Should I go on?
Yes.
Okay. I also made some recommendations. One of them is that the management and other operators should abide by the laws that govern the profession and the nation. Then operators should be given the freedom to conduct their business, but not at the expense of professionalism. Then for the democratic reforms also, it should include state-owned broadcasters to public service broadcasters, and this will help to remove autonomy, and it will help for programming independence, where somebody, you know what to produce and you have the creativity to produce that, and you're not being tied down or controlled unnecessarily by the powers that be, or by the media that controls whatever that comes out of it. Then licensing private broadcasters to operate as independent. You know, it's true that we have private broadcasters, but you see that there are some rules that are put up sort of control. They are private, but at the same time they are totally not free. But when you give them this licensing, you know, it will allow them to operate as independent and alternative to the competitors, to the public broadcasters. And when the public broadcasters know that, okay, they have competitors, and they will be able to also bring out their best and not be sidelined by the control, whereby they are allowed to also compete freely with the private broadcasters. And government should also prevent harassment of practitioners, operators, and media ownership. There should be a playing ground or a playing field for the media, the operators, the practitioners, and the government. And when everyone comes together and there is harnessment or synergy, it will help for production to be high, and to also play down on the negative effect of power dynamics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mercy. We'll take both papers and then do questions at the end. So if you want to come and present.
You said?
Yes. We said that at the end of the whole presentation, question will be asked. So we're not asking questions. We are not going to ask you questions right now. So at the end of the whole presentation, okay, questions will be asked to individual presenters.
Okay.
So you have to be online and watch all the other people present.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, is there some specific place where
it's good if you stand here when you're in the camera. So
yes, say HG, you're facing down here.
Yeah, it's actually kind of here.
Okay.
Stand in this corner so that you can be seen.
And the other thing would be able to switch the slides, right?
Okay, so second paper is Jan Miessler and I'm going to try Jan KŘEČEK. Is that okay? Did I do all right? Charles University. Take it away.
Okay, so thank you for your introduction. My name is Jan Miessler. My Jan KŘEČEK. We are from Charles University in Prague, Czech Republic, the place known for good beer and formerly communist Czechoslovakia. And well, today we are going to talk about the public service broadcasting and measuring its balance. That is something that we have been collaborating on in the project back in Czech Republic. So can I ask for switching the slides? Yeah. Okay, so to kind of introduce you to the situation in the Czech Republic, we have a similar system as in the UK, that we have the mixed model of public service broadcasting and private broadcasting, with the difference that here in UK there is one big BBC and we have two different institutions for the radio and television. Also, I would say that the regulation and control of the public service media is quite similar. We have the license fees, the limited advertising revenues. One thing that is quite specific, I would say, about Czech Republic is that the broadcasters, including public service broadcasters, are required to be objective by law. It's written in the law that they should be objective, and there is the broadcasting councils that are supposed to keep an eye on if they are really doing that. The good thing for the public service broadcasting is that these controlling institutions, these councils nominated by politicians, are not really powerful. They cannot do much to really control these institutions. So in fact, they have quite a large degree of autonomy, which is good for independent journalism. However, the point of the presentation is that maybe too much of the autonomy might be a good thing, might not be a good thing, right? If we compare the situation with the other countries in the Central Eastern Europe, like Hungary and Poland, you may ask, well, isn't it better to have the media, public service media autonomous? You can see what happens when there is like some political actor that is strong enough to take control of the public service media. But well, in the Czech Republic we can have the opposite problem of the journalists and the media organizations being too autonomous, not really being as responsible as they might be. Well, critics of the public service media in the Czech Republic say that the television journalists are these public service institutions. Let's just like this. Okay, well, the problem of the autonomy, let's focus on hypocrisy. Well, I think that there is some kind of contradiction in the role of the public service media and the public service journalism in this context, that on one hand, by law, they are required to be objective, neutral, balanced, not to be biased politically, right? At the same time, as a good journalist, they should be efficient watchdogs of politicians, expose their wrongdoing. So, on one hand, they are supposed to be above the political struggle, and at the same time, they are kind of part of political struggle, right? So it's kind of like a weird situation. Well, when we say that the autonomy of the public service broadcasting is a precondition of the quality of its journalism, then when they get involved in the political fight, then things get complicated and dirty, and they can be accused of hypocrisy or trying to having both things at the same time, being objective and also like fighting for their cause, right? So yeah, then the problem of balance. As I have said, they are required by law to be balanced, objective, and so on. And it is being kind of like observed if they are really fulfilling this obligation, which you can imagine is a problematic thing, right? Because how to measure objectivity and balance? Objectivity is a difficult philosophical concept, but well, balance is kind of like something more easy, but still it's difficult. And well, how to apply it in the real life on the broadcasting. There are in different countries, they do it in different ways. But, well, in the Czech Republic, I think that the research on how to do the balanced broadcasting has been having some issues. Well, the problem is that you cannot simply stand there with a stopwatch and measure if all the politicians get the same amount of time in broadcasting and then say, okay, this guy got 5 seconds more, so they are not balanced or something. There has to be some kind of scope for reasonable evaluation of that. But then how to do it in a meaningful way, in a fair way, right? Because not all political actors are equal. There are big important parties and small parties, so probably there should be some proportions in giving them space. Not all the topics are relevant in the same way for all the political factors, and then there are these details like some politicians speak faster, so they can say more things, or some refuse to go to the television and then they complain that they don't get enough time in the television compared with the others. And all kinds of these problems. In the Czech Republic, the law kind of acknowledged that this can be an issue. So it has a provision that the balance in the television should be linked with the real importance of the political actors that are being featured on the broadcasting, but the law doesn't specify how to measure it. What does it mean by the real importance, how the balance should be measured? So, well, there is a scope for interpretations. What is still fine and what is not really fine, and there is nobody who would have the final word. So, yeah. So as an example, we have research of the balance of the television broadcasting that has been kind of requested by one of the broadcasting councils, and my colleague was doing that. And well, compared with basically all the other previous and later research into the balance or not of the broadcasting, it realized that there was a serious problem with balance. Maybe it should be addressed. Well, that was something unusual, and there has been huge criticism of this report. Well, and this kind of demonstrates the fact that at the same time the public broadcasting institutions are supposed to be objective, but also they need to defend their interests. They have to be part of the political struggle. So this critical report about the bias of the broadcasting before some elections was interpreted by the defenders of the public service broadcaster as an attack on the principle of public service broadcasting and a stick given to the critics, like want to destroy the public service broadcasting, right? So there have been a lot of debates and criticisms in the Czech media studies circles and so on. And well, what was the most interesting was to hear from the journalists that, okay, we are objective ones and whoever criticizes us must be biased and politically motivated, which is kind of also revealing the way how they are thinking about the concept of objectivity, balance, and bias. So yeah. Well, I think that this issue boils down to the problem of decision making. When we are doing research that is supposed to evaluate if something is okay or not, we are measuring something, right? And then you have to decide as a researcher about the criteria, about the way how you design your research. And well, you have different factors, so you have to give them certain importance, right? So the researcher needs to decide about the definitions and criteria. Well, if they are not defined in the law or in some document that would be binding, then everybody can set up their own criteria, right? So my colleague Jan KŘEČEK set up his criteria and he found bias. And the critics were pointing out, okay, if you select different criteria, you will maybe not be able to find the bias, or the bias will be different, or If you measure it in a different way, you will get different results. So this leads to the paradox that for the public service broadcaster, this situation is quite good. Because if there are no binding standards, binding definitions and criteria, how to measure the balance and objectivity, it can always criticize any critical report that it is using the wrong criteria without actually saying which criteria should be then used, right? So that you can actually measure it, take them by their word and so on. So, well, actually that was what the Czech television said in the press release after that research has been published, that, well, yeah, they have chosen one criteria, but, well, we choose a different one, and the results might be different, who knows? We are not going into that. Okay, next slide, please. So, yeah, well, this is also linked into some institutional situation of like the public service broadcaster kind of paying for the reports, evaluating its bias. They are required to do that by their codex, so they issue the call for like these things. Well, basically the situation is in the Czech Republic, which is a small country where everybody in the media studies knows each other, is they are kind of cultivating the research corporations that are capable of doing this research. So basically, if they are paying them, then they expect as a return the positive results that are not criticizing them for bias. So basically, if the report says there is no problem with the balance of the broadcasting, nothing happens. But if there is a problem in the report, like that the report says that, well, there was bias, something should be done, then the Czech television says, well, yeah, you are trying to destroy us and your criteria have been like chosen up by you. If we chose the criteria ourselves, we would have maybe different results. So yeah, this is what is going on in the Czech Republic right now. I think that might be the last slide. Oh, okay, so yeah, too much of the good thing. We are getting back to the issue of the autonomy of the Czech television or the public service broadcasting in the Czech Republic. Well, yeah, I would say that the quality of the criticized critical report were not really important. The real problem was that it challenged the reputation of the public service television and its self-perception of being really objective, and it confirmed the claims or criticisms of the people critical of the Czech television that it is really right-wing biased. And well, it has been presented as part of this political struggle against the public service television. The problem is, if you would accept this perspective, there is really no way how to be able to criticize the coverage of politics of the Czech television as biased, because you can always find a way how to do the research that will show that it is not really biased if you choose the right criteria. So yeah, too much autonomy when they can get away with this might be a problem, which is kind of paradox in the context of the Central Eastern Europe, because most other countries have the opposite problem. Okay, that is it, I think. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I might ask you to sit here so that you can be seen on. Are you coming up as well, or are you?
Yeah,
just so you can be seen.
John, there is yes.
I know it's a bit weird when it's just by the camera. Yeah. You can be seen.
Hi.
Everyone can be seen. Yes, they can. I'm going to expand that. Thank you. It's all very dark. All right, thanks for those two papers, which actually very, very different contexts, but obviously point to very, very similar issues about kind of national systems of broadcasting and how they might be regulated and so on. There's a lot of questions I've got to ask. If you've got, do you have any questions? Do you want to start? Sure, I've got, because the chair shouldn't really start. So,
well, because it's a very small.
yeah,
It's a small game that's in here, so I wouldn't object if it did start. Just for the second paper, really. I should introduce myself. I'm Chris Roberts, by the way. I'm doing a paper this afternoon. I only arrived last night, so apologies if you haven't seen me. No, I'm worth seeing. So with the second paper, which I really liked, and there seem to be some similarities at least with what we have here in the UK. I like that. So early on in the slide, you talked about the kind of the Prague bubble, thing, which is often a similar thing, although Prague obviously is attached to public service broadcasting over here, but also just journalism in general. So that Prague bubble, I think, was quite interesting, and there are similar things to the public service broadcasting over here. I think, at least in the UK, there are probably many reasons, but the two principal ones are the sort of social, cultural, and educational capital, because all the journalists go to the same schools and universities as the elite political actors. There's a good piece of research by a former colleague of mine, Gary Merrill, who did an analysis of the top, I think the top 100 high-profile journalists, 60 of which worked for the BBC, and 65% of them went to Oxford or Cambridge with the people they're supposed to be reporting on. So it presented a real problem. So they all go to the same school. So that's kind of that relationship is really incestuous. So the first point is, I don't know if that's the same in the Czech Republic or in Czechia. Sorry, I don't know if it's Czechia or Czech Republic. And you also said like the right sort of dominates, at least over here, the right dominates in some ways, just in terms of political economy. Sort of simple political economy analysis of our media means that, you know, it's owned by billionaire oligarchs, which I know is different to public service broadcasting, but they kind of echo each other, and I think the BBC are really fearful of going against the right-wing oligarchy. So my question is the same true, or similar true in the Czech Republic? And the second question is there a difference between objectivity and impartiality? Because here in the UK, it's woolly, but the BBC don't claim objectivity, but they do claim impartiality, which is slightly different. So I don't know if it's the same true in the Czech Republic.
Okay, so well, yes, I feel that the situation is similar in the Czech Republic. There is also the factor of post-communism, you know, after 1989 and the change from communism to democracy. It has not been fashionable to be left-wing, right? Because it's attached to the communism. So basically, the generation of journalists started in 1990s and after, so they are right-wing and they think that's the normal thing. And the objectivity and balance, yes, in our research we have been addressing that obviously it's not exactly the same thing, but well, the journalists are at least supposed to try to be balanced, right? I would say that it's a little bit weaker thing than objectivity, but if you take it really seriously, to be perfectly balanced is also a challenge. But objectivity is like supposed to be some unachievable ideal, yeah, or at least that is how it is explained to our journalism students. Right? So we should strive for objectivity, but we will never be able to reach it.
Yeah, it's like a
God's
eye view,
which is objective, yeah, which is kind of thanks.
And your summary also is really good, because I love that, which is really problematic, but I think you summarised it really nicely. Sorry, I've now gone on again. That critics can find a way of, you know, almost data mining and finding the evidence that they want, and they don't seem to produce a falsifiable, replicable research method, which of course is the value of academia, because we have research methods and you present it and say, well, take the same content, use that method, and you'll get the same results or similar results. But yeah, in kind of media discourse, that's not required really. People just, you know, the BBC often criticised for having a left-wing bias, which is absurd. 34, I think it's 34. When I did my PhD, it was 34 academic studies at the BBC, and 33 of them suggested the opposite was true. and the one that wasn't an academic study was Civitas, which is a right-wing think tank. And they don't produce a research method, they just make claims. So I liked that, but it strikes me as quite a problem when you reach that point. And the critics don't have to produce this research method, which academics do, and no one listens to academics. So.
Can I ask a question to kind of follow up to that? You said then about post-communist, it's not kind of trendy to be left-wing and so on, and it's ANC, so it's kind of normal or whatever to be right-wing. Can you explain what level of right-wing? Do you mean kind of centre-right as in just pro-capitalism, or is it extreme right? What's that version of rightness that you're talking about?
Well, I will try to answer you. When you said that the problem of bubble is a general problem of media, or the people in media, in post-communist place, it's a problem of general politics. As an example to your question, Czech Republic, Poland, Hungary, which is comparable, there is no relevant left-wing party. It's a problem of the whole political scheme, of all political dimensions. There is strong, moderate right-wing parties, pro-capitalist, liberal. That's what we call the Prague bubble. And then there are populist parties, which are more or less nationalist, more or less conservative. And that's it. That's maybe the...
Do you think there's literally no left party, or there are left parties, but the support for them is really tiny? Very small.
Yeah.
So they do exist, but there's not. But it's really tiny.
Disappears. And again, tell me again your question.
Well, no. So I was asking what you meant by right wing. So how far on that spectrum is that? So it's a kind of centre right.
Center.
Is the majority that you kind of you're sort of talking about. And I don't know if you answered the other part, the first part of your question, which was this kind of bubble idea when you talked about they all go to this in the UK, everyone goes to the same schools, same universities, and then they become into positions of power, and the journalists holding them to power have been friends with them for decades. Does that same kind of route work through? Okay.
Prague bubble, or so-called Prague cafeteria.
Okay.
It means that sometimes you don't need education, because there were open production, open places after '89. The people came there without any university education. Just stay there. Not only, but the main criteria or main qualification is just to have the common sense. Common sense. Common sense means that you have to be pro-capitalist, focused on individual rights, and to be like very not scared, but have a difference from left politics from collective rights.
Common sense, you mean that in the kind of Gramscian,
Yeah. Common sense is that
and it just reproduces hegemony.
Every left activity leads to gulags, leads to the box.
Okay, all right, yeah.
That's really interesting context. Kind of, it's perfectly. I'm not justifying it. It's perfectly logical given a history, and it's really difficult trying to work out how you kind of respond to that. There's some other questions I want to ask you, but I kind of want to ask. Did you have questions for Mercy, or shall I answer? Okay. Yeah, Mercy, I was just kind of interested in if you could give some more detail on some of the things that you were suggesting in your conclusions. So you talked about a need for democratic reforms. Could you be a bit more specific about that? Exactly what kind of democratic reforms were you thinking of?
You said?
Shall I?
Said,
Okay.
So the question,
for the democratic reforms, I see that it should include transformation of state-owned broadcasters into public service broadcasters with our programming autonomy, and at the same time giving them license, giving private broadcasters license to operate independent of as alternative, that's to operate independently as an alternative. And again, it will also help competitors of public broadcasters when you know that you have private broadcasters who you also compete with. And again, the reform allowing them to operate on their own without interference. Then there's also the convergence of broadcasting and telecommunications, whereby foreign broadcasters are meant not necessarily to be subject to local regulations, and this would present in national broadcasting systems, where the foreign broadcasters already know that they are not being limited or being abided by the local regulations that exist. And again, it will also help for rapid expansion of digital technologies, which will also help increase channel availability.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question was similarly about kind of giving us more detail. You said about, you said about transparent regulatory frameworks. Could you tell me what you see as not transparent at the moment and how you make regulatory frameworks transparent? So give us a bit more detail about what you mean by transparency here.
That's transparent regulatory mechanism. Okay, yeah, proponents of broadcasting liberalization believe that building a democratic society is characterized by pluralistic policies and respect for human rights, which includes freedom of expression, requires not only a pluralistic media system, but also media diversity, where there is diverse media.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead. Yeah, please do. Please. Yeah, because you can be seen and so you might have to shout.
Yeah. So my impression was that the situation in Nigeria is like not as good even as in our country, Czech Republic. But well, when you talk about like the need to improve things, like is there any political actor or some force that would be actually capable and willing to improve these things, like motivated to do that, and or is it likely not to succeed because there is nobody like that doing these improvements?
Oh, I believe if the government be conscious and having the people in mind and trying to not just seeing the media as a partnership, that's partnering with the media and allowing them to just exist and operate freely on their own, with little or no control over them. I think it will give opportunity for foreign broadcasters also to impute. And when they also impute, they see it, or the eye at which they will also look at certain issues or programs will be different, and it will help to obtain objectivity. So I still believe that the government and the political parties or politicians who are over there can also come up with some policies that will not just dampen the media, but that will encourage the media and give them a level ground to work productively.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, please.
So you are in a sense saying that the media should be part of the political decision making in the country. You know that. Okay, in Nigeria, I know that there is a high level of media capture. Okay, in terms of regulations, media ownership, and all of that. Most of the private media are owned by the politicians themselves and all these business and the elites, all that. And then this makes it quite difficult in terms of decision making when it comes to what will go out for the public as news. And not only that, the ones that are not owned by these politicians or political or these elites that are owned by normal media students or those who are just independent of anything, they still depend on these elites to survive. They still depend on politicians to survive, and that it kind of interrupts their decision making when it comes to news. Sometimes some news are underreported, and sometimes some go for reporting depending on what the issue is, especially when the news has to circulate around their sponsors. So they try to beat the news down to favor their sponsors. I think owing the majority of the media in Nigeria, I mean, but television media is owned by Nigeria. Looking back from the originality of television station in Nigeria, you know that it has always been owned by government. Just of recent, individuals started owning broadcast media in Nigeria, which are owned by the political actors. Don't you think that even if a decision is made, even if it is independence is granted to the media, nothing is still going to change because it's still being owned by the political actors, and most of the media is still being owned by the government, because apparently in every state in Nigeria they have their state local television. Every state, all the 36 states in Nigeria have their local television station. And I know, I grew up in Nigeria, and I know most times, especially during political period, they can't even make a decision of their own. If you do not belong to the ruling party, there's nothing about you, I mean, an opposition party will not be covered. So they're kind of limited and all that. So imagine when the power is given to these people to make decisions themselves, nothing is still going to change. They will only suffocate the individuals who do not have power of their own. They're only going to suffocate them because apparently the most decision, in terms of decision making when it comes to what goes into the news, it's dependent on the government and the proprietors of this television station.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. I believe with digital technologies, if the digital technologies will be allowed to operate freely on their own, and maybe certain policies being how would I say played down on that, I think with digital technologies coming up as competitors, that it will help to enhance productivity, news production and everything. It will help media practitioners to also be objective and be somehow free from the control of media ownership. A situation where you have your little phone and you can access news and you can produce certain things at your own level. I think and you are the control of yourself, you understand. I think to a large extent or to some extent that to reduce so much power that is concentrated on the private owned ones and the government owned ones, because with the digital technologies, people that are not in the top, so to say, will also have access to information, and with the convergence, it will help to reduce the control by the powers that be.
I just want to add, I think in terms of profiling solution to this whole issue and all that, I think what I just want to add to what you have said, actually. In my own thinking, I think what should be done is, because if we say that the power should be concentrated, I mean, should as in incorporating like social media platform, digital platform. So what happens to the traditional media? So it's gonna just vanish like that. It's just be there for nothing. I think it's not about. I think what we should do as a country is kind of a total reformation, ranging from political decision and everything. Total cleansing, you know, in terms of who becomes the leader, who governs, ranging from the local council to the federal council, because obviously the government is so corrupt, and that makes the media also corrupt. To be honest, it's quite difficult to find media that is not corrupt in Nigeria because they dance, like just like what you said, they dance to the tune of whatever. I don't know how you put it, but I think you said whoever pays more is who
pays the piper gets the tune.
Yeah, okay, whoever like pays the piper. Okay, like if you pay a piper, so you tell the piper
yes.
what to do. So yeah.
He takes the tune, yes.
Pays the tune, yeah. So that is what should be done. I think it starts from like expand like cleansing the whole system. If the system is led close by choosing the right leader, the leader is going to make a decision that will also favor the media. And then the media will not sit up in terms of what they report. And a certain organization should be set up that monitor what this media report. While the media are going about investigating an issue, that particular organization should also be investigated, doing underground check. In that way, they will balance the report at the end of it, and whoever is found going against what the main issue is should be punished. In that way, I think objectivity in terms of news reporting will be achieved. Okay. I don't know what I missed or something. I just a kind of like contribution.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Can I ask? Because in a way, you were asking a question then, sort of about hope. Will anything change? And who might it be? And you asked the same question, like who might do that? So I'm going to ask you two the same question, which is in terms of hope. Like, where is clearly you're functioning as a resistance to this, if in terms of the report, you know, that you produced and so on. But the concerns that you're raising about kind of the right-wing bias of the media and all that kind of stuff. Where is the pushback from that coming from? Is it just from academia, in which case go academia? Or do you see a possibility of that being changed?
Well, possibility of change. I think that actually this might have been one case of the academia and the researchers kind of being, in a way, having some influence outside of the academia. Only if kind of maybe stirring some controversy, but at least it's about setting the agenda that you can start thinking about how to measure the quality of the news, if they are really balanced, how a lot of stuff balanced and so on. But well, because another aspect that we have not yet covered is that many of the future journalists are studying at our university. So maybe when they will learn about this issue and somehow bear it in their mind when they start working in the media and trying.
I know that's good. I remember at a conference years ago when a lot of us were discussing about, you know, universities being detached from the real world and stuff like that. And somebody said something which I try to keep in my head, which, you know, how do we be political as academics? And somebody said the most political thing we do is teach. Because it's true. Yeah, and I was like, oh, good. That means I don't have to do anything else. I can just that makes life easier. But it sort of reminded me that that you're kind of going, well, actually, you're hopefully creating the next. It's not like you're trying to indoctrinate people into a set of ideas, but you're raising a set of questions and you're questioning a set of assumptions and saying, okay, hopefully, when you go out into the world, you can take those with you. So that's good that you're doing that.
There is one thing, I'm not sure if it was clear from the presentation, that the start of our working on this topic was 5 years ago when I produced this this analysis of balance and objectivity, which was really criticized. So after that, we made a project and we were state funded for 3 years grant to write a methodology about how to measure impartiality and balance and in public service media. So maybe this is the answer to the question. We are working 3 years on do it, and now we publish it. So now the situation a little bit changes. Now they can see, they can say, we have no methodology. There is already. The only thing one can say that they will refuse and they will ignore it. But it's a little step. How the methodology is. And one thing is seems to be automatic, but is not. Now was the election of new general director of Czech TV. Okay. That is the reason why now the anti-monopoly organ are investigating about this this paying media content expert, which should be independent by law, but the only responsible founding was from Czech TV. So it's nice that the former director had already twice his 6 years period, and now he was applying to third one. And a little small step forward is that he didn't won the election. Oh, we are not like this. He will be till he's dead, because he was building this well-functioning system, and we will have the connected bodies which are independent, but they're dependent. So that's another thing. Should be logic. Should be self-evident.
It's gratifying. It's gratifying that you produce a methodology. So they say, well, we don't know how to measure impartiality and balance and objectivity. Saying, no, well, we've done that. We've done the work. So I love that that happens. The issue, which is not your issue, is what are the incentives? What are the incentive structures that are in place for them to adopt that? If it's easy for them to just ignore it, which is not something we could do much about, but yeah, you're right, small steps. But if the incentives are, well, just ignore it, then this happens all the time over here as well. There's no incentives for it.
But then it's much more noticeable that they are not using any proper methodology, right? Well, I would also like to clarify that we are not like enemies of the public service television. We are so happy that it exists, and it's also the most trusted like the media organization in the Czech Republic. It just like still it has some little flaws that we would like to see.
I understand that, and I also have it. I have it. Not that my work is well known at all, and I long ago conceded what my career would be, which is teaching. Bits of research, but written teaching, which I happen to enjoy, luckily. So I think that's the small step. But also, yeah, I have similar concerns. Again, if my work was well known, but when I was writing my PhD, I'm not an enemy of the BBC. I just wanted it to be better. But I was really worried in my early days. I was really worried that the Daily Mail would get hold of it and go, look, this academic here is really rubbishing the BBC. I was like, well, I don't want to tear it down. I want to make it better.
Is that why? Because actually, I wanted to ask about that. So if you produced that report 5 years ago, whatever it was, and it was kind of dismissed and criticised, I'm kind of interested in knowing what that was like to live through. Because again, there's this question of, as academics, we want to engage the world, and we're required to kind of do that. But universities very often, and I've experienced this too, are very good at protecting us when suddenly you are having loads of journalists criticising you and you're being slagged off in the media and stuff like that. Did you enjoy that? Was it stressful?
I totally didn't enjoy it. Maybe in the first moment, but when it was in the time of really political circumstances, and there was the former Czech president was re-elected, and he got his inauguration ceremony. And started to, instead of making some ceremonial speech, he was repeating his hate against Prague bubble, and he mentioned this analysis.
Really?
Yeah. And when he mentioned this, the politicians from the Liberal Party started to refuse and exit the ceremony.
Okay.
And from that time, I really felt that I am used as a stake in the fight which is not mine.
Okay.
So the only reaction which was logic in this situation was to keep it in the scientific field, write an article about all the research problems which are in this course, and try to apply for this state-funded grant to make the methodology which I got. And now it's like 5 years, so as the times there are changes, and now is another government, another president. But if the truth should be said, today is the first time after many years when I am speaking about this.
Really?
Yeah. I didn't like, because it would be the same. It would be like, on the one, you start to be a stick.
Yeah.
Were you kind of bruised by it? Were you sort of bruised and injured by the attacks?
Well, it wasn't uncomfortable.
No, I think I would be.
Yeah.
I don't have the
To be a small figure in the battle, which is not your battle.
But as I have been observing that, like, the televisions and the letter to the team at our university to do something with him and like being supported.
Yeah, that must I say that the reaction of our university was, because the Czech TV was making a pressure, and they were following the academic standards and just moderated discussion, but didn't decide that I should. They were offering that I should apologize, something like this. So.
Your university was saying you should apologize.
No, the TV.
Oh, the TV was
making pressure on the dean that university should take it back. The analysis.
And the dean protected you, or?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. But yeah, that's really interesting. If this is like the first time you're, no, because like I say, there was something I published, God, it's 13 years ago now, which had a lot of media coverage for 2 or 3 days, and that still now affects how I think about publication, and to the point where it kind of limits some of the questions I might ask, and in effect, therefore, the system works, which was I said a set of things that we're not meant to say. And now I censor myself to protect myself, and it's like, how do we kind of do that? That's a separate thing. But if, there's this broader question about how we as academics be public figures, contribute to debates, and it sounds like you did exactly what I did, which was I'm going to go back to the data, the thing that I know and refuse to go outside that, be dragged into anything else. I did research. This is the results. That's who I am. But it's hard to hold on to that.
I think it takes an enormous amount of courage, and I mean, it's because obviously sometimes in academia, like, the stakes are quite low, right? We're not. I thought I'd write a PhD that would change the world. Within a year of starting it, I thought clearly it's going to change the world. No one gives a shit. No one cares, and that's right. No one should care really. And then it doesn't even change your world. In the end, I got through just because it's vanity, right? I wanted a doctor, but I self-censored because I was bruised just by a kind of online debate. And it takes an enormous amount of courage and mental fortitude to then come back and applaud you for coming to speak publicly about it, because I'm not sure I could do it, to be honest. So well done, because I'm honest.
No, I'm agreeing. I was thinking exactly the same.
Brett, you said like 13 years ago, and it still affects you.
Yeah.
Mine was about a decade ago, and it wasn't even a big publication. It was just an online spat, and it really impacted me because people were talking about, I'm going to come to his university, and this is too much.
So no, I would say the same. So I genuinely appreciate that you're willing to do that here. Did you had your hand up earlier? It was about 10 minutes ago we chatted about that. So I don't know if it looked like there was a question.
Yeah, and this in your abstract, I read where you said that the way the balance is constructed is not consistent with what the university. And I was just wondering, it's not what is being done by the media should determine what is constructed. I mean, the law itself should be flexible to accommodate what is being done by the media. It shouldn't be consistent with the law somehow. I'm just thinking because it depends on the direction of what you're doing.
Well, the law in the Czech Republic that requires the objectivity of the broadcasting is like very, very old from the 90s, and that it's the result of the situation that we had like 2 channels only, and like they did not want them to be biased, and that was one way of do that. Also, the understanding of the objectivity was, I think, quite simple at that time. But well, yeah. That's the problem. How well, if even the journalists themselves and not many media researchers can actually do a good job in measuring the balance of objectivity, then like how can it be in the law produced by the judges and lawyers who are not even experts on this field? So the regulation is kind of obsolete.
Because for me, in terms of news reporting, I believe that once the news is one-sided, so the journalists will have to also go one-sided. In a situation whereby you are doing the kind of investigation, you're supposed to investigate like 2 persons, and then only 1 person agreed to open up to you. So there's no way you can ensure balance or objectivity because the other person actually locked up, and then you have 1 person. So absolutely is going to be one-sided kind of report. So I think that flexibility should be also be accommodated.
We are speaking about only balance and impartiality in the relation to political parties.
Yeah, not really partiality actually.
And the project was on the pre-election broadcasting.
Really, yeah.
Where the special rules are applied.
Okay, to just election.
It's also the easier case than to measure
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, okay, okay. So I'm just talking about it generally. I'm not focusing on election.
Well, everyone can say it's like this show 5 minutes for Mr. Chu and 5 minutes for
Yeah.
Mr. Iyer. Is it a good thing? Well, also in a better way.
Yeah. And Messi, I like your suggestion, your recommendation when you said that foreign media practitioners should be brought into Nigeria, so they're working hand in hand with Nigerian journalists in terms of and all that, and also in terms of that journalists, I mean the media should be accommodated when it comes to decision making and national ground, which is the highest way to go, because there they'll be able to tell this is frankly what we want, and this is what that can lead to being objective in terms of the news making good decision in terms of what goes to the news. Because right now, is who sponsors, who pays more, that gets reported more than sometimes. When you pay more and you do and you have a past past experience, I mean your past behavior is full of negativity and all that, they seem to douse that. Okay, the only expecting is our sponsors and all that. I know when the foreign practitioners come in and then they're able to integrate with the national journalists in Nigeria, the practitioners. A lot of changes will emanate. For instance, looking at the past election in Nigeria where they were reporting, should I call the new president the president because he's still being how did you to call him my president, to be honest, because I know the process he became the president is not correct. Okay, so I find it difficult to call him my president. Okay, so when the foreign observers came, you can see their report and all that is tallied with what the people said than what those in power were saying. So those in power, who was the past president, said they won the election, but the people who voted said they didn't win the election. And then the election observers from foreign countries said that the election was full of malpractice. So that can also be replicated in terms of news writing, in terms of media activities in Nigeria, whereby they integrate.
Of course.
Yeah, so, yeah. Yeah, thank you so much. It was really nice, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Well, yeah, we have a few minutes left if there's any other questions, but we could also finish early. This was scheduled to brand 3 papers and there's only 2, so is there anything else anyone wants to add? Or
yeah, you really need to also ask questions because you have your colleagues here, so they ask you questions, so if you have anything to ask them, you're not restricted from asking questions.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, you can ask.
Okay, I'm not going to really ask a question, but I'm just going to appreciate everyone there, and I'm going to commend everyone. I want to say thank you for the opportunity, and at the same time, I want to encourage you to keep up the good work.
You too. Good work too. All right, thank you. We'll finish there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay.